Hello and welcome, I'm your CodeMonkey. In this lecture we're going to enable the player to pick up and drop objects. Okay, so we already have the player working. I can approach this container counter, interact with it, and yep, the player picks up something. Now all that's left is being able to approach a clear counter and being able to drop this object, so let's do that. Let's go over here on the clear counter script, and when we interact with it, we're going to do a bit of logic. First, let's just check if this counter is empty, meaning if there's no kitchen object on it. So let's test if has kitchen object or if not. So let's say if we don't have a kitchen object, then there is no kitchen object here. And if not, then there is a kitchen object here. Okay, these are the two valid options. So if there is nothing here, then let's check the player itself. So we go into the player and we can ask the same question. So has kitchen object. So if the player is carrying something, so over here the player is carrying something. If so, then basically we just want to drop that object from the player and drop it in here. So that's very simple. We just go into the player, we get the kitchen object that the player is holding, and we just modify the kitchen object parent onto this object. Alright, so that's it. Just with this, it should already be working. Let's do a quick test before we handle the rest of the interactions. Okay, so here moving the player, and if I just interact with the clear counter, and nope, nothing happens. Okay, great. Since the player is not carrying anything, nope, nothing happens. Alright, great. Now let's pick up something from the container counter. Okay, so now the player is carrying a tomato, approach the clear counter, press the button, and yep, there you go, there it is. Alright, awesome, everything worked. Now this is an excellent point to know just how easy this was to implement. And the reason why it was so easy was because we focused hard on writing some good clean code for how the object and the parent system works. Because we took some time to think about that, it was now very easy to implement this brand new action. So this is a very clear example of the power of writing good clean code. Okay, so with that, now let's implement the rest. So over here, there's no kitchen object here, and the player is carrying something, but if not, we've got the else. So player has nothing. So if the player doesn't have anything, so let's not do anything. So player not carrying anything. So those are all the possible states up there. And then down here, if there is a kitchen object on this clear counter. If so, then let's check if the player has a kitchen object. So in this, the player is carrying something. And if not, then the player is not carrying anything. So basically, if there is a kitchen object here and the player is carrying something, if so, then we don't want to do anything since we can't give the player two items. However, if there is a kitchen object here and the player is not carrying anything, then we want to give it to the player. So let's just get the kitchen object, the one that is on this clear counter. And let's do the exact same thing. So set the parent and set the parent onto the player. Okay, so that's it. As you can see, some very simple logic. So let's test. Okay, here we are, and if we interact, nope, nothing happens. Okay, great. Now pick up a tomato, go there, drop it, and yep, there it is. Now if I interact again, yep, there you go, I picked it up again. So I can go somewhere, pick it up, drop it, and everything works perfectly. All right, awesome. Now the last thing that we need to fix is the container counter. Right now it's giving out an object every time, even if the player has something. So if I pick up, yep, it works. Now if I pick up again, there you go, we've got our nice harmful error. This should never happen. So let's set some nice checks. So over here on the container counter, okay, we have our interaction. And before we spawn anything, let's just see if the player can pick up something. So once again, very simple. Let's just go into the player and we check, does the player have a kitchen object? If so, we're not going to give it anything. But if the player does not have a kitchen object, then yep, the player picks it up and we give it the object. Okay, so that's it. It's this simple. Let's test. So here we are, let's pick up some cheese. Okay, great, now pick up another one, and nope, nothing happens. Okay, great, we're already carrying something, so we cannot drop anything. Now drop it in there, now pick up a tomato, and yep, it works. I can pick it up, drop it, and yep, everything works. Okay, great. Let's just do one more thing. Over here, the container counter is spawning the object, and the object is the one that we assigned. So over here in scene view, we've got the container counter. This one is placed on the scene, and we made an override to spawn a cheese block. Technically, we could keep doing this. Pretty much just duplicate objects, modify the sprite, modify over here the kitchen object. That would work. But another better approach would be to simply make some prefab variants. And yep, that does work. You can make a variant of a variant. So let's do exactly that. Over here on the container counter, let's right click, go into create, let's create another prefab variant. And let's say container counter, this one will be the tomato. Now let's go inside the prefab. And over here, make sure it has the kitchen object for tomato. Okay, great. And over there on the sprite. So let's find the object sprite and choose the tomato sprite. So there you go, this one. Okay, let's exit and save. All right, now once again, let's right click on the container and let's make yet another one. This is going to be the one for the cheese block. So let's go inside of it and over here, modify it for the cheese block. And inside the actual visual, let's modify the sprite, and it's actually down, so the cheese block. Okay, great. Let's go back outside. And since we're here doing this, let's make all of the other grabbable objects from the containers. So let's first make the kitchen object SO. So let's go over here. We can right click, go into create new kitchen object SO. Let's make one for the bread. Then let's duplicate this one. We're going to have a cabbage. And finally, we're going to have the meat patty uncooked. All right, so now let's make sure to assign all the data for all these scriptable objects. First, we need to make the actual kitchen object. So let's duplicate tomato, name this one bread. Let's go inside of it. And first for the kitchen object itself, let's make sure to drag the correct one. Okay, there's the bread. And for the visual, this one is not a tomato. So let's go inside our visual assets, inside the prefab visuals. Let's pick up the bread visual. Okay, there it is. That's all we need. So let's go outside, save the changes. And then select the bread scriptable object, drag the prefab reference, okay? For the sprite, this is the bread, and finally just call it bread. Okay, let's do the same thing for the other one. So next up for the cabbage, let's do the cabbage, drag the cabbage scriptable object, let's go inside and modify the visual, so the cabbage visual. Okay, that's it. Then on the cabbage scriptable object, drag the reference for the prefab, let's assign the sprite, and finally give it a name, cabbage. And finally, the meat patty uncooked. So let's do that one. So let's duplicate it, name it meat patty uncooked. Let's go inside, modify the kitchen object SO for this one. And for the visual, let's select, here it is, the meat patty uncooked. Okay, let's go back outside. And on the scriptable object, let's just drag the prefab, assign the sprite. So this one is the uncooked, so it's this one. And finally, meat patty uncooked. Okay, great. So we added all of these scriptable objects. We also have the prefabs with the visuals and the logic script. Now let's just make the container counter. So once again, let's create another variant. So prefab variant, this one is for, let's say for the bread. Then let's make all the other ones already. So let's go make another prefab variant. This one is going to be for the meat patty uncooked. And finally, another variant. Also here, make sure you're creating a variant of the container counter. Don't make an accident of creating a variant of something else. So let's make another variant, one final one. And this one is going to be for the cabbage. Okay, we have all the variants. Now let's just assign them. So let's go inside the bread. And over there, modify the scriptable object for the bread. And for the icon, modify for the bread icon. Okay, let's go to the cabbage, save the changes, modify that one for the cabbage. Go into the icon and modify the icon. And finally, the meat patty uncooked. Let's go ahead, modify this one for that one. And the icon, put it on that one. All right, everything is working. Now let's just place them over here in our scene. So let's get rid of the ones that we made some overrides. So let's get rid of that container counter. Instead, for that one, let's drag the cheese block, put it right in there. Let's put it on X of 1.5, Y of 0, Z of 3.5, okay. Then down here for this one, let's put the cabbage next to it. Let's rotate it to face upwards. So like that. Let's put it on X of minus 1.5, Y of 0, and minus 5 on the Z. Then for tomato, let's get rid of this one and use the proper tomato one. So let's rotate it, put it on X of 0, Y 0, and minus 5. Okay, next we want some bread. So let's put the bread up here on the left side. Let's put it on X of minus 3. 0 on the Y, and 3.5 on the Z. And finally, the meat patty uncooked. Let's put it over here a bit more on the side. Let's put it over here on X of 7.5, 0, and 3.5. Alright, so we have positioned all of them. Let's just make some more clear counters so we can actually place the objects. So let's put this one over here on minus 4.5, this one over there. Let's also put some counters, let's say one on the right side, and a bunch more down here. Let's rotate them upwards. Put this one on 1.5, minus 5, and one more over here on the side. Okay, great. So we have all of our container counters as well as a bunch of clear counters. So let's test and make sure that everything works. Okay, so here we are. Let's go down, pick up a tomato. Yep, there's a tomato. Now a cabbage. Yep, there's a cabbage. Now some bread. There's some bread. And some cheese. There's some cheese and some meat. And yep, there's some meat. All right, awesome. Everything works. So with this over here, we added the ability to pick up and drop objects on an empty container and spawn them from all kinds of container counters. Now in the next lecture, let's build a counter we can interact with in a very interesting way.